how is my body?
Mhm,
And how am I? How are my eating habits? How's my workout habit?
mhm.
All of those things really affect us and can affect how I approach a room, how I lead people, and built within me is this sort of soul, body, spirit connection. And when my physical health is low, then it affects how I come across and can absolutely lead to me leading with insecurity because I just don't feel good about myself. Hey, everybody. So glad that you're back for another episode of Between the Lanes, and always an honor to be with you. Thank you for allowing us into your world. Hopefully, being able to speak encouragement, hope, life into all the ways that you lead, all the different lanes of your leadership. Maybe you've tuned in before, and something has hit you as a business leader, and you're like, man, that's what that really hit me today. And today may hit you as a father or a mother and that leadership lane. So allow your hat to kind of determine, kind of come off and on and determine which one you're gonna wear today or which lane you're gonna be in. Be open to whatever God may do and what He may say to you today. So, Dad, you got any
Yep.
words of wisdom of as a means of introduction today?
Well, I just remind everybody that we come to you as a result of the sponsorship from the Executive Leadership Institute. If you haven't been there, our website is executiveleaders.com. You can go there and check out resources and what we do as a part of doing this podcast. Other than that, I'm really excited about today. I'm excited about the subject matter and look forward to being directed to maybe meet something exactly personally where you are today.
Yeah. Um, okay, so let's kind of like sort of set the stage for this, right? So leaders, um, you, as you lead, you have to, um, sometimes you feel like you gotta have all the answers. You've got to put an image forth of strength
Mhm.
and security and sort of this solid sort of foundation. But I would say this. I'm gonna say it this way, and it might not be accurate. Okay, but I think there is one trait that is common to every leader, every person who leads. All right. Now
Can't wait to hear this.
there may be more than one. Okay. So this might not be the only one. Okay. But I'm going to just focus it as this one trait is common among every leader, and it's actually insecurity. Now,
Uh,
you were probably hoping this was going to be a real positive. Like, here's the common trait among every leader. It's like, wow, this great ability to communicate and cast vision and motivate. Actually, I think it's insecurity. Why?
mm,
Because every person struggles with some level of insecurity. You can look at it and go the most sort of gregarious, outgoing kind of person. There's a little bit of a seed of insecurity somewhere in there. So we're going to talk about insecurity today and how to overcome it. Okay, we're not just going to sit in insecurity and wallow in our own
mm,
sort of
mm.
collective misery related to insecurity, but we're going to recognize that it is a part of our human condition, that this is something that can be a struggle. And so, how does that affect our leadership? And our ability or inability to overcome that insecurity is absolutely going to affect the work that we do, the people that we lead, how we do it. So, Dad, you're probably one person. I said everybody struggles with it. I don't know. I don't think you have. I mean, I've seen you my whole life, and what I know is you are secure, but you're secure for a reason. But look, because I said every leader has it, you probably have struggled with insecurity as well.
Mhm.
Any sort of intro comment on that?
I yeah, I agree with you. And in my positions over the years of leading, uh, insecurity has been a factor. I don't think you can escape it. And in a simple sense, when I think of insecurity, I think it's um, it's a lack of confidence in the situation that you're put in.
Mm,
Um, and uh, I have to do, or I have done certain things to overcome the insecurities that I feel. For instance, I don't really feel secure in a large group of people
hmm,
that I, a new group.
Not
You know,
and you're not talking about speaking in front of them. You're just talking you're in a social setting and there's like a large group of people.
I mean, you know, I want to get in a corner with two or three of my friends and be friendly from the corner. You know, hey, how you doing? You know, hey, good to see you.
Uh-huh.
But I I suppose what drives that is an insecurity that that is rooted in I don't know if they're going to like me.
Mm,
And so I can sit over here and, just, wave and be in an element and not know if they're not going to like me or not.
yeah.
It's driven out of an insecurity. But now you put me into a situation as a leader where I have to be gregarious. I have to meet a new client or a customer or
Mhm.
a member. Uh, I can I can totally, you know, put on what is needed in order
Did you
to get
did
there.
you just get a phone call?
I did.
Yes. As you're talking, I'm looking at you addressing your watch. So just for anybody watching, you
Yeah.
saw that you
Sorry, I had to say no. Sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I'm talking to you.
yeah, I mean, so I think about for each one of us, and I've heard this said that in a lot of ways we're all driven a little bit. The control inside of us is our inner 10, 11,
Mhm.
12-year old.
Mm.
And if we haven't appropriately addressed that child who is still making decisions for us, is still interpreting life, interpreting situations that come our way. And if we haven't appropriately addressed that child, and usually that age of life is where something has happened that has suddenly caused us to view life in a certain way. And many times that shapes our security or our
Mhm.
insecurity. And so thinking about it as you think about that for your own life, I know many times when I'm dealing with the things that I'm insecure about, which since you confessed I'm insecure, you said you're insecure in a large group. I get insecure when I'm put on a spot to give a thought. And I can go back in my life, and I don't know exactly what age it was, but when I was a kid, and saying something, and you got the whole room and kids are ruthless, right? They make
Mm.
fun of you or whatever, and it's not like that is driving me every day. The thought of little kids laughing, but if I'm really honest and I get down to it, that has shaped how I feel,
Yeah,
even as a 50-year-old
absolutely.
man.
Mhm.
So being honest and getting to that root down in me is really important. And so I think every leader has to evaluate whatever that was to you. And again, you may go, I can't go back to that stage of my life. Okay. But there's something else that's in it. So let's get into it
Mhm.
and talk about some of the roots of insecurity.
Yep.
Um, I think one of the, I mean, and so there's going to be tangents because they kind of several of them will stem from fear.
Yeah.
So there's fear. But the first one I want to talk about is the fear of failure,
Mhm.
and a very common one. We all have heard and understand this. It's commonly talked about, but um, whatever failure has looked like to you. Again, in my scenario, it was a failure of, hey, did I say the wrong thing? And so in saying the wrong thing, people reacted and laughed. So today there's still the am I going to say the wrong thing and how that's going to be received by people. And so that failure to me is a failure of a reaction and a response that people will give me based on what I said.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other. I mean, there's on a grand scale. I might be insecure because I fear that if I fail, my business is going to crash. Revenue's not going to come in. I'm going to tank the business. I mean, that's on a grander scale. But as you evaluate yourself as a leader, what motivates you when you think about I'm sitting in front of a group of people, I'm leading people to a direction and a place that I want them to go, and when I feel this thing inside of me begin to well up, what scenario caused that? What aspect of a fear of failure? What was failure to you? What is failure to you? And how does that begin to sort of manifest itself in your own life that you can feel yourself going, I'm now being driven by insecurity, and I can sense that insecurity welling up inside of me because I don't want to fail in this particular scenario.
Yeah. I what that makes me think of is a performance mentality.
Yeah.
If I was raised in a performance-based home.
Mm,
You know, I didn't see it as that until I got into my adult years, but I I was very concerned about how my perform what my performance would produce, and if it produced a failure, how my parents would feel
yeah,
about that.
yeah,
And I carried that into adulthood, and it kept me tentative. It kept me tentative in things I don't I would evaluate, am I going to win at this? Am I going to succeed at this? And if not, I would I would hold back, or I would have to, it would take an extra degree of effort to move forward out of that fear
yeah.
of failing, or failing in my performance and disappointing people.
Yep.
And go back to your age. I don't I don't know if this is singularly it, but this is a major memory I have. When I was in 5th grade, I was one of the biggest kids in the 5th grade. Tallest, you know,
Mm.
I I probably was as tall as I am today in 5th grade. And
Really?
yeah,
You were a tall kid. I
yeah.
don't know that I knew that.
And so the 5th graders at recess always played the 6th graders in keep away. And whoever ended up with the ball at the end of recess got it to start
Mm,
the next recess. So one day we were at recess, and the 5th graders had the ball, and I knew the clock was ticking, the bell was about to ring, and so they handed it to me, being the biggest 5th grader, and my responsibility was to make sure we didn't lose the ball.
mm,
And so I grabbed it, held it in tight, sort of bent over, and the 6th graders surrounded me, or were pulling at the ball and everything, and I was afraid.
mm,
I was insecure that I was going to let down my 5th grade colleagues, and I started crying.
mm.
And uh, when I started crying, the teacher wanted to know what they were doing to me, you know, that made me cry. And the bell rang, and so everybody went back to class. Well, from that day on, through the remainder of the school year, they called me crybaby. And um, there Uh, so that part of my own insecurity
Yeah,
was, I don't want to fail. And if I fail, I don't want to risk that everybody around me would call me crybaby.
yeah. Mm. You can still go back to that moment right now, can't you?
I can. I
Yeah.
can. Very, very real. So
You know,
fear,
if you
fear of
decided
failing.
to cry right now, I won't call you crybaby. This can be a healing moment.
It could be cathartic, huh?
It could be. I'm just saying, you might need that right now. This is this is a safe place.
Yeah. In front of all of our friends.
Yeah, um, how many things in our lives are prevented from being super successful because we're just afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I think it's prevented so many great works. I think probably great works of God. I feel, I don't live in a place of regret. Like I don't think that way. A lot of
Hmm.
people, like they dwell on the past and maybe
Hmm.
regret decisions. I don't. And yet, but I do reflect and go, man, are there moments where my fear of failure kept me from doing this next thing
Hmm.
that could have been a great, could have been a great work for me in my life that God wanted to do, but because I was afraid to fail, I didn't do it. So let's talk about the second root, which is a little bit connected, but it's fear of man.
Hmm.
And built within all of this is this desire. I think for the majority of people, now there are a lot of people who don't care about pleasing people. So that this might be you. Might not be a root of your insecurity, but in some aspect, what wells up with us is a fear of man. Again, that can be reflected in a lot of different ways. Maybe on one side, it's a people pleaser. I don't want to do something because it might not please people, and I just like to I keep a happy-go-lucky kind of attitude that pleases people. Or it could be driven in some part based on performance, and I fear authority, or I fear a father or mother, or I fear a boss, because my fear of man has driven me to view authority in a way that restricts me from taking the next step. And so there's all sorts of insecurity that when I get around someone in authority, I just cower because I have a fear of how they're going to respond or what my performance will speak to them.
Yeah, I think when I think of fear of man, maybe another term I could use is fear of consequences.
Mm,
The those that are in authority over us, it's like I don't I don't want to disappoint him, and I don't want to pay the consequences that would be the result of upsetting him,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so or her. So that fear of man keeps me tentative in my efforts. I think back to like um, high school basketball,
mm,
and what I noticed in that time for myself, but I also noticed it with you, and that is when you were in the game, if an offensive player drove around you, or you had a
which barely
turnover,
barely happened. Didn't happen hardly ever.
absolutely hardly ever.
That
But
one
when it
time it did.
but when it did, it made you tentative because you thought the coach is going to pull me out.
Yeah, yeah,
And that fear of man
right.
be drove an insecurity that impacted your performance in the game. It
That's right.
did same thing for me when I was in high school playing basketball as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we'll get to how do we address some of these things in a second, but definitely that viewing as you're reflecting in your own life right now, how do I view authority or just people in general, and how does that affect my security? So
Yep.
third aspect that's a root would really just be simply a lack of confidence. And that might be a very real thing. I'm not confident in myself because I don't have experience
Mhm.
or my experiences have told me this. And meaning said something to me about me, and so now my confidence is a little bit shaken. And so that might be a real thing. Sometimes insecurity isn't just based on false realities. I might be insecure because my confidence has been shaken. So, as I think about this particular point, I go, this in this root, it's and when we get to how do you address it, sort of this is sort of acknowledging that, man, some of us have had tough experiences,
Mhm.
and those experiences might have shaken our confidence, and that the shaking of our confidence has created an insecurity.
Mhm.
And what we're going to get to is if we recognize that and go, yeah, that's true. Actually, I'm not very confident, and that's built an insecurity in me. Well, so then the question is, how do you correct that? What it is that we need to do to build that back. But a shaken confidence can really build a very legitimate sense of insecurity.
Absolutely. I think um, I would say every one of us needs a mentor,
Mm,
someone that is speaking into our life, words of encouragement, clarity of direction. Now, in a simple sense, our fathers are supposed to be that.
mm,
But some of us, maybe many of us, don't have fathers that fill that role.
yeah.
The degree that I have security in my life, I think, is reflected by something that my dad did all the time. And he would tell me in my teen years, uh, "You're going to be a success no matter what you do." And it would come at the most random times.
Mm,
Uh, but what happened as I moved from my teens into adult living, got married, and we took our first job transfer. I took that job transfer with a confidence that it's going to be okay. I'm leaving the town that I grew up in. I'm leaving the town that my parents lived in. I'm going to a whole new place where nobody knows me. And I had a confidence because of what my dad spoke into me, and I knew if I fail, I'll
mm,
be received back in home.
mm, yeah.
And and we owe that. We need somebody to help drive that level of confidence
Mm,
that says it's worth it.
mm,
I can do this. I'm not arrogant. I'm not trash talking, that kind of overconfident,
yeah.
but I'm confident to say I'll give it my best.
Yeah.
And if I give it my best and I fail, I have a place to come back to, a place that believes in me, that encourages me, that
Yep.
loves me. We need those people in our life.
Yeah. That is a great point. And if you find yourself legitimately feeling insecure because your confidence has been shattered,
Yeah.
then seeking out people who can help speak into your life that help build back that confidence is key. And we'll get to that here in just a second as well. Fourth area that I think is a root of insecurity is comparison.
Mm.
Man, you know, and you can
Hmm.
kind of go back to fear of man. There's a connected piece in terms of people, but when I compare myself to other people, man, insecurity kicks in right away. You're gonna find a million people that probably in some form or fashion are better than you, and that's tough. Now, what I've also found out is as you go in life and you people you've compared to, maybe you've picked a certain aspect of their life that you're comparing to. And then you realize, oh, those people have similar struggles in other areas of their life, and
It's true.
and so the areas that I was comparing them were just very isolated. I kind of colored their whole life through this one area that, like, oh man, you know, I wish I had that, or I was that, or this, or and in reality, those people have their same struggles. It's that idea that if we all took all of our problems and threw them into the center of a room and we saw everybody's problems right before us, I'd probably go back and pick mine back up as opposed to
Yeah.
taking everyone else's, you know. So comparison, you have to put it in the right frame, but comparison many times can be a motivator for people. I see somebody else, I desire what they
Mhm.
have. Now, then you get into are you motivated by envy? And you don't don't want that.
No.
But I can be motivated when I'm inspired by what somebody else has done or what they're doing, and that's fine, that's good. But when I compare, it's that comparison that now I'm judging myself compared to what they've done or who they are or whatever, and that breeds insecurity inside of me.
It does. And there's extremes. It leads to extremes.
Mhm.
And when you make comparison, it either moves you on the end of security. I don't feel good compared to that person. I'm not as good as that person. I can't do it like they do it. Or it leads you to pride.
Yeah.
I'm better than that person.
Yep.
I do it better than they do, and you can't come to a balanced place of saying I'm confident, but I'm not overconfident. I'm
Mm.
secure, but I'm not overly secure.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that's what we're looking for
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
in the mix.
So the fifth root that, and again, there probably could be a ton more roots, but we're going to talk about five. The fifth one is actually a lack of competence. So not a lack of confidence. We already talked about that, but a lack of competence. And again, this is, I think, a legitimate way that it contributes to insecurity. I know for me, I feel insecure about
Mhm.
making decisions or leading to a certain degree if I don't feel competent. And the competency could be based on, do I know the topic? Do I know the subject we're talking about? How well do I know that? And so when I'm leading a group, if I don't feel
Mhm.
competent in that's going to make me insecure. And so many different ways that our competency could or lack of competency could be reflected. But again, we're about to get to how do you resolve this. But I think recognizing that if I don't feel like I am a subject matter expert, and particularly when it comes to leading people, you're probably going to find yourself in a lot of times. In fact, you should find yourself a lot of times where on a particular subject, you are not the smartest person in the room. That's actually the whole goal of a leader. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who understand topics better than you. But if you are somehow that insecurity in you is sort of is driven by the I feel like I have to be the smartest, I'm going to be insecure because I don't feel competent.
Mhm.
So how you actually have to address this as a leader is recognize areas that I need to be increase my competency, and there are some legitimate ways that is, but also being comfortable to go, just because I'm not competent in a topic or a subject doesn't have to affect my security. And as a leader, that's actually what we're trying to drive here. So as a leader,
Mm.
how do you address that? What areas do you need to feel competent in? And what areas is it okay to not be competent? Don't let it affect your security.
Yeah. I think about this quite a bit from the standpoint of as a speaker.
Mm.
I stand before a group on a subject matter that I may be comfortable with, and then I see somebody in the room that's been at it longer than me or that I view has more competence than me.
Yep.
All of a sudden, my material sort of I'm insecure in
Right.
my material
Right.
because it's like, well, what's this guy gonna think or gal
Yep.
gonna think about me? And they ought to be up here and not me. And I start questioning my process
Yep.
of being there, and insecurity takes over.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to take place. You need to step in with a level of confidence to say, I can do this. I have a voice. I have a perspective, and trust that it has input into the room.
Yeah. So we did a webinar sort of related to this topic, and if you didn't see it, you can go on our website and view that, or go on YouTube and check it out, where we talked about the 10 signs of an insecure leader.
Yep.
And the whole point of that webinar was to really help us identify, either in us or if we're being led by someone who we're going, oh, these signs that I'm feeling really are reflecting this person is insecure. And we really pointed out on that webinar, these are the 10 signs of an insecure leader. We didn't provide a bunch of answers to it. We kind of just said, here's signs of it. We
Yeah.
talk about this topic in our cohort and the material that we do, but sort of addressing it now. We're hitting it today, insecurity, from a little bit different angle than we were on that webinar, but that might inform you a little bit more on some perspective of this. So now let's move to, so how do you overcome it, right? You find these areas in my life, I'm insecure, and really, when I'm honest about it, they're driving my leadership. They're driving how I relate. Again, I want to pick the different lanes of leadership. They may be driving me as a parent. Listen, when your kids have to be basically able to talk, and they start challenging your security of like, wow, they just said something I don't know that answer to, and I feel pretty insecure about that. Or they say something, you're like, man, they dropped some wisdom right there, and they're 3 years old,
Yeah.
and so as a parent, you can begin to be challenged with insecurity at any stage of your kids' lives. But certainly as they get older, and are really wrestling through the issues of life, and you find yourself needing to, I gotta have all the answers, I gotta know how to answer all these questions, and you
Mhm.
find insecurity welling up in you as a parent. If you don't learn how to deal with that insecurity, a lot of times what we do to mask insecurity, we come across overly strong. We try
Yeah.
to compensate insecurity with an oversense of security,
Yep.
and that can damage relationships. That can be insincere or lying, just as a way of over compensating for it. So, so we want to talk about, how do we now overcome? We've identified these insecurities. How do we overcome it? Um, Again, like anything we do, I want to say the first step in it really is being honest and recognizing it about yourself.
Right.
That's why I think the momentary pause in your life to go, I recognize something that came up in me as a parent or a leader. I was meeting with my team. I felt insecure. What was that insecurity about? So how do I then step back? And I mean, I might need to process it with a trusted friend, an
Hmm.
advisor of sorts,
Hmm.
or somebody go, hey, this happened, and I give me some feedback. How do I process this? And they're going to give you feedback, or just in your reflection. Maybe this podcast today is giving you some context to go, man, yeah, literally the imagery that pops in my mind is, I remember when I was in 5th grade and such happened. Wow. That came to my mind right now, and I'm seeing that affect my leadership. So recognizing it and putting the appropriate amount of pause in your life to go, that happened. I recognize I was insecure. And many times we're the only ones who really knew that.
Yeah.
Now, somebody
It's
really
true.
close to us may go, hey, that saw some insecurity there. But the truth of it is, we might be the only people in our world who knew, ooh, I was super insecure there. And what was that insecurity about? How can I overcome that? So recognizing it and calling it what it is key.
Yeah. Second thing I would say is guard against self-deprecating conversation.
Mm.
And when you're insecure and you feel that insecurity, the temptation is to criticize yourself, to take it out of the hands of the people that you may be
Yeah, yeah. You disempower their words by just bringing it on yourself. Yeah,
exactly, and fight that.
yeah.
Don't attack yourself because of insecurities.
Mm.
And don't be arrogant. And you mentioned it.
Yeah,
Sometimes the way we fight that insecurity is we become overly strong. It's okay to say, hey, in some way, hey, I don't feel like I have all the answers today
yeah.
in what we're talking about. I'm going to give you some thoughts, and I'd love to get some feedback in this.
Mm.
The humility is that is needed, or the humility that comes forth will really help address the insecurity because it makes you relevant to
Right.
people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I can talk about it from a place of vulnerability without being self-deprecating.
Yes.
The next one I would say is to really get rooted in your identity.
Mhm.
Insecurity can really form in us when we're desiring or trying to be somebody we're not.
Oh, yeah.
And that sort of poser,
Mhm.
approach is going to make us insecure. Why? Because we're trying to be something we're not.
Yeah.
We're trying to be someone who we're not, or we're trying to do something that we're just not wired to do. And that can be a series of insecure steps that only build this sense of insecurity in me because I have a series of either failures or ways in which that I, I just don't have a track record. And when you really pause to go, well, why has that not been successful? It might be because I can't play the guitar. And I keep trying to be a musician, and it turns out I can't play the guitar. Not only that, I can't sing, but I have a desire. I want to really, really bad, and so I keep trying it. Well, you know what? That's not your identity. That's
Mhm.
not who you are. So apply that where that might be if that's for you, but get rooted really in understanding who you are, get confident and comfortable in that. And if that's a little bit different than what you desire, there are ways to address that. One might just be go, okay, I need to really call that what it is and go, that's not my gifting. That's not what I'm really called to do. As much as I love it, wish it were, I can't do that. Or it may be, there's some training I could do to make myself better, and we'll get to that as another key in this. But I think really understanding who we are will go a long way to help us overcoming insecurity.
And again, I go back to we need people that we trust that speak into our life because out of an insecurity, you can go, I'm just no good at that. And you actually need a little bit of training, a little bit of development, and you could be good at it.
Right.
It is a gifting,
Yep.
but you need somebody that will speak honestly to you about that. And, you talk about poser. I have a poser story
Ah.
from my own life.
Okay.
When, when I was growing up, my parents lived a block and a half from the junior high that I went to, and, um, I wanted to be cool, and, the it was the '60s and, rock music was just coming along, and, so, I got a couple of friends that would come over to my house, and as kids were walking home from junior high, uh I had a I had a guitar and an amplifier, and my friend had a guitar and an amplifier, and so and we would make noise with the windows in
Just
my
make
bedroom.
noise. No, you didn't say you'd made music.
No,
You just made noise.
it would be like, "We're let's tune that guitar."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it'd be loud enough so that they could hear,
Yeah.
and then we would put on a record
To make
of
it.
a group loud enough so it's like, "Oh, wow, man,
Wow.
those guys sound amazing." And it was total posing,
Yeah.
and I was so insecure that I'm gonna get found out, and
Yeah.
one day I did get found out. I I said, I was approached by one of the leaders of the ninth grade class saying, "Hey, we're gonna have a sock hop."
Okay. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
our term for a dance.
Uh-huh.
Uh, "Would you and your band play at our sock hop?"
You're like, "Yeah, I'll
Uh,
bring my record and
yeah.
play it."
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got called out for being a poser, and I was
Oh,
so
man.
insecure.
Oh, you were like the Milli Vanilli before they were a thing, man. You were
Yeah,
oh,
I
that's
wasn't
funny.
even good at lip syncing.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a full-on poser for sure.
Yeah, I th
But you worked it out of your system.
I
You
think
worked
I've
it out.
worked it out of my
Although
system.
sometimes when you still play the guitar, I hear the me, you're still trying to find that chord.
Fortunately, you've taken, playing guitar to a better level than your dad.
Oh, yes. Well, I don't know about that. Okay, next way to overcome it would be to work on our own self-development without doing it that from a motivation of comparison. So again, comparison can be
Mm,
a driver in a negative way, but if I'm motivated by someone who I'm inspired by, it's fine. It's such a fine line.
yep,
So you're not motivated and driving because the comparison will drive your insecurity, but self-development and seeking to develop
yep,
is what we all should be doing. You're probably watching this podcast because you're motivated by that. You watch other podcasts, you tune into things, you've done the training necessary to develop. And so if comparison is part of what we struggle with, how we can overcome that insecurity is, instead of focusing on comparison, go, now that I understand my identity, I understand what my purpose is, I now see the gap.
Mm.
If where I am today and what my purpose and my sort of my calling, or where I'm supposed to be going, what I'm supposed to be doing, and I see that gap, now I do the development, the proper training necessary to get me developed.
Yeah. Yeah. And what we have to realize is as we're developing, our what we think our capacity is less than what our true capacity is.
Yeah. Yep.
We need somebody to push us a little bit, to keep us accountable, to say, "No, you can do this. I want you to do this." Then I go back to saying we all need a mentor.
Yeah.
We need people who can speak into our life and call out things, giftings, and abilities, and sort of stretch us a little bit. If we only do what we think we're good at, and we know we won't fail at it, and where we only participate in the things that we're secure in, we won't grow to our full potential.
Yeah. Yeah. But let me say this. I think one of the ways that we can help build back confidence, let's just say we're at a place where we've got a series of things that have really shattered our confidence. And now let me talk to both you as a leader, personally to you, but also you as you lead people, and you see someone who might be hurting in their confidence. Then I think what's important to do is to set them up with something that could give them some wins.
Totally.
And I think about that for kids. If kids are struggling with confidence, then you don't keep putting them in a place where they fail. Though I understand there's a stretching. If we're only sitting in a comfortable position, we're never going to be stretched and we're not going to grow. So sort of this is on a fine line between that, the heart behind that, and the heart behind, hey, your confidence is shattered. So how we're going to overcome that is we're going to get some wins.
Yeah.
And it might be some small things. We're going to begin to build this sort of snowball effect of building back your confidence. And we do that by setting you up with some wins. And so that may be the case for people you lead. You need to identify that in them. Hey, these people need some wins, and I'm going to put them in a position to do that. Maybe it's you, and you go, I really need a boost, and then maybe it's stepping back a few levels. And I don't mean levels in terms of organizational levels. I'm just talking about maybe what you're pursuing, to go, I'm going to work it back to a place where I can get some key wins. We've watched the talk by the military guy who's doing I think it's a graduation of the Marine Corps or something like that, and he's like, you want to succeed today, start by making your bed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everyone's probably seen that.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is, it's a small win,
Yep.
but there's a confidence, as simple as that is, that begins to build in your day. You might need to go all the way back to that sort of thing, that you begin to build a confidence on some minutia area of your life that will help build back some confidence.
Yeah. One of my favorite statements a guy told me one time was uh, he made this statement. I was asking him, he was telling me about in my own life, if you'll do this, you'd be a huge success. And I had no confidence.
Mm.
And I said, how can you be so sure that I'll succeed at this? And just without hesitating, he said, because leopards don't change their spots and things are transferable. And I went, what?
Mm.
What do you mean by that? And he said, the what you do in the little things of your life, what you do every day consistently, you'll do in this new opportunity, and the same success you've had already
Mm.
will transfer into this new position.
Mm.
And I thought about that, and I thought, I think the Bible speaks to that.
Mm.
Faithful in little, faithful in much.
Yeah.
You know, God, there is a plan. If you'll start today and you'll do the right things today,
Yep.
then what takes place, you will develop, and that out of that development will come the security
Yeah.
that you desire.
So the next one I want to talk about might hit all of us a little hard, of how we can grow in our confidence and overcome insecurity, but it's actually to improve our physical health. We know there's this, connectivity in our mind and our sort of our soul. I mean, we're body, soul, and spirit, so it's connected. And if I'm not confident, I don't feel good about my physical health. It could be physical appearance, but I'm more so focused on the health. How is my body?
Mhm,
And how am I? How are my eating habits? How's my workout habit?
mhm.
All of those things really affect us and can affect how I approach a room, how I lead people, and built within me is this sort of soul, body, spirit connection. And when my physical health is low, then it affects how I come across and can absolutely lead to me leading with insecurity because I just don't feel good about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, um, food is an addictive issue.
Mhm.
We all understand the issues of comfort eating and things like that to deal with our insecurities. And I think to address health in an appropriate way, to get the right amount of sleep, to eat healthy, to work out, it has a an emotional and a spiritual impact
Yeah.
on our life and on the success that God wants to produce in us.
So we won't stay there too long because I'm convicted about that own point. I know so all of us will to a certain degree, but you really can see how it affects your security. So the last point I want to draw out, and this goes back to kind of tie into the point of competency, and that is there are ways for us to overcome insecurity simply by simple training.
Mm,
And again, you're on a podcast, so I might be preaching to the choir. One of the things I realize in reading books, many times the book that I'm reading I was drawn to it because of the content or the author. And as I get into it, that may be part of it. But what I've actually discovered is there's like in my brain, something gets unlocked as I'm reading.
mm,
And I'm connecting not just to the content of the material, but I'm connecting in my own creativity. Something gets unlocked in my brain when I begin to do that. And so what I've realized in my life is I get insecure when I've gone a period of time where I don't feel myself being stretched mentally.
yeah.
And so any way that that could be for you could be any type of training class you can do or go to or watch online or whatever, or it's books. And if you're not a big reader, then maybe like me, I just want to encourage you to go. There's a way in which you can view the text that it's actually partly about the text, but it's also mainly about what gets unlocked inside of you. So maybe you need an encouragement today to find a good book to read, almost more so because of what unlocks inside of you than what the material is that you're reading. But the training builds in us the competency that gives us confidence that helps to sort of squash that insecurity.
Yeah, and I have a random thought to this. My mom is 94, and
That's funny. My grandma was 94.
hey, uh,
So dumb.
she
That was so. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that.
she used to tell me that you need friends in every generation. And I find myself for just sometimes, you know, I look at you with such admiration and respect, and I think, what do I what do I bring to the table
Mm,
that you don't already have? Or I look at someone younger than you. I look at Tyler and I think, oh my gosh,
mm,
you know, his his expertise in finance is
mm.
so amazing, and so part of the process is if we're learners, part of the learning is to have interaction with every generation, or at least with multiple generations,
Yeah.
because each generation brings a perspective and a learning opportunity that you know we won't have if we only stay within the context of our own generation.
That's a great I love that because there's a humility that's a part of learning from different generations, and
Yeah,
I think definitely as a in the boomer generation, you're at the top generation in today.
yeah,
So to have the perspective that you can learn from folks younger than you, maybe a generation or 2 or 3 younger, that takes a lot of humility, but I think is actually part of what keeps generations young.
yeah.
If I only look at
Totally.
my peers or above, then I'm missing the opportunity to stay young, relevant, or at least connected with the rest of society as society continues to get younger.
For sure. It's not so much about your age, it's about your mental process that determines whether or not you're getting old.
Yeah.
You know, will you engage multiple generations and keep that thinking fresh
Yeah.
even as you age?
Yeah.
It's important.
Well, look, our whole goal today was to actually help you figure out how do you overcome insecurities. Hopefully you learned at the beginning you deal at some in some way with insecurity. We all do. So the question is, what are those insecurities in me? and how do I overcome them? So hopefully today you've been encouraged, inspired to deal with those because the people around you need you to deal with your insecurities. Because as you deal with them, you will become a better leader. So, Dad, why don't you pray for us and close us out?
Okay, I will. Lord, thank you for your love. And God, thank you that you are the one who gives us security. Lord, you are the one that the strong tower that we run into when things are difficult, when we don't understand. We look to you. And I pray that for every person who may be struggling with an area of insecurity in their life, that you would develop them in such a way that insecurity is minimized and that the fruit of your work is realized in every aspect of their life. We thank you for that. Pray your blessing over them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We'll see you next time.